I look now, you heard of the Nashville movement and the Atlanta movement. I was in Nashville in 1959, 60. I'm 71, 70 years old. We would see C.T., Bernard Lafayette, John Lewis was down at Fisk, and all of us. You asked the question, was there any kind of fear? We were all afraid. There was a fear down inside, but Dr. King could inspire something inside of you to let you know that the cause for freedom and justice and equality was greater than any of us. And when you would go down, you didn't know. When we would march to the theaters downtown or the Greyhound bus station, and we'd sit there and see the abuse from other students, it was unbelievable. But there was something down inside.
Did we believe it would work? We were watching it work. We had come step by step to this time. It didn't just start with one person or one group or one town. We had been working all the time toward freedom in America. We still have to free America.
And the fact that there were casualties and injuries does not mean that the strategy wasn't working.
That's exactly right.
A lot of the movement, as we were talking to the young people in the convention, it's about young people. When we got into this at 18 and 19 years of age, many of our parents were saying, don't go down there, don't get involved. Worse than that, many of our administrators at the colleges and universities, the president of my school, I was an all-star basketball player, don't go down. Eventually, by going down, many of us lost our scholarships. Many of them did not be able to continue with their education. So there was a lot of sacrifice that was for the cause, and Dr. King would inspire us to continue to do that. Is that when we would go downtown, we would also be joined with young people from Peabody, from Vanderbilt and other places at the time, but it gave us a certain sense of our own who-ness, and a lot of that came from the inspiration that Dr. King would say. And a lot of times, many of us didn't even have to see Dr. King. We knew that Dr. Vivian was there and others, so it inspired me to go ahead and become student government president. That was my senior year in 1963, and when we came back from the march, that we came back and we started getting very much involved again. But then John F. Kennedy was killed November the 22nd there in 1963, and we went down again. But even after that, there was a new level from the leadership in the movement that inspired all of us to get back in. I think that same kind of enthusiasm now must be infused into the students today. They do it a little bit differently, but that same enthusiasm, willing to risk, willing to sacrifice, and here's something else, willing to listen to those that are there. Because if you think about the movement overall, there were young people. Dr. King was only about 30 years old, Andy was like 28. They were not old people leading the movement. So now that's what in the end product of folks such as myself and other people, that was the strength of Dr. King, to inspire, which means to breathe into you, to make you believe that you can do anything at any time against all odds. And it still permeates now. A man named James Orange, he should be recorded in this. He was at the heart of all this effort. He was a young man. So when you get Andy and Hosea and C.T. Vivian, those of them talking to us, then we could feel we could do anything. We could literally walk on water and change Washington if we wanted to, and we did it.
What would he say if he was here today?
Is that if Martin was here, he wouldn't be dead, right? That would change everything. But the point is that he isn't here, right? But he would be thankful and happy, and is happy, to know that we continued the struggle, and that after his work came the natural follow-up, the presidency of the United States. All right, and that's going to be followed up with another minority, not necessarily us, is going to also be president. That we're going to get rid of racism in America. That was always the goal, all right? It wasn't a goal simply to win a struggle in a town somewhere, right? It was, in fact, to get rid of racism. Until we get rid of racism, we will not have properly understood and lived like Martin taught us to live.
My perspective early on, because I was so young, was that I didn't really fully appreciate that this was a man who would transform the world. Right. I saw him as a father. Yolanda and I were taking music together, and we had our first recital, and he missed the recital, and we were all dressed, you know, with our coats to leave, and for some reason it just was my parents, Mrs. King, Yolanda were there, and he came rushing in to the Phyllis Wheatley YWCA, and you would have thought that he sat down in these metal folding chairs. This is one of my favorite stories about Dr. King. And he sat down as if he were sitting in Carnegie Hall. And he explained to Yolanda that he was so sorry he was late, and would she please play for him? And she said, "Of course, Daddy, I'll play for you." And she sat and played, and we were about to leave, and he turned to me and he said, "Would you play for me too?" And so I had the wonderful perspective. Of course, later I appreciated, you know, what a great man he was, because he died when I was a child. But I saw him as a loving father, that we forget that this man who meant so much to the world first loved his family, which is a piece of the piece that we have to remember, which is such an important piece of who he is, you know, this wonderful human being who loved his children.
Can I just say one thing? You use a term that he died too soon or too young. Everything is in divine order. It was his time. He had done what was assigned unto his hands to do. We could say the same thing. Even Christ at 33, that was his time. And look what happened. Martin was 39. It was his time. He had given everything, his life, his family. So it was not an inopportune moment, but a kairos moment, a time when it was supposed to happen. He turned it over to those of us. I've given my life. Now you all go ahead. So it was not that he was too young or too old or an inopportune time. It was the right time for the right reason to let us pick up the mantle and carry on.